The following episode contains explosive and other off-putting noises, some literal, some figurative. Please proceed with caution. Welcome, weary travelers. I'm Gabriela Jones, the new innkeeper of the Inn Between, where the trees are green, the rooms are cozy, and the guests are only a little bit strange.
Good morning, everybody. This is Carl Tuckerson.
And I'm the female co-host whose name you don't remember.
Here on the Seattle Radio Morning Show, your trusted source for stories and news coverage around the city.
This morning, we received a report about bad traffic today.
Bad traffic in Seattle? Doesn't sound like there's anything unusual about that.
You wouldn't think so, Tuckerson, but apparently it's some kind of weather-related incident, and not just the usual I-5 slip and slide. We'll keep you folks updated as we learn more, but in the meantime, expect delays and stay safe out in those congested, sopping wet with zero visibility 65-mile-per-hour roads.
When you say it like that, it sounds a little bit like a running nose.
Kind of like the one I'm getting right now from all this pollen in the air.
Yes, the hikers of Seattle, a community of avid nature lovers and strong historical ties to the outdoors, find themselves constantly baffled each year by a wave of devastating seasonal allergies, typically lasting from February to as far as November. Now, these allergies are not just inconvenient, but dangerous. It's even been argued they pose a serious threat to our culture and way of life. How are we supposed to keep hiking and walking our dogs on our 2 days off a week with this ongoing assault on our nasal cavities? A protest is set for later this afternoon outside the Capitol to demand better outdoor recreation conditions.
Yeah, Tuckerson, it's a serious issue. And some policy around that could really make a difference in those couple hours each week when I'm not at work.
Sorry for the disruption, everyone. I'm getting an update that another protest, unrelated, is happening nearby, and while there's not any immediate danger, we may have some noise in the background.
Another protest? Is it the left or the right?
No one seems sure at this time.
And with that, here's the upcoming week's weather forecast. Monday, cloudy. Tuesday, cloudy. Wednesday, cloudy with enough wind chill to pull out your Patagonia fleece and wear socks under your Birkenstocks. Thursday, rainy, but not so rainy that you can't go outside without a coat. Friday, cold enough in the morning that you'll put on a wool sweater, humid enough in the afternoon that you wish you were wearing a tank top, and by evening your armpits will have turned into a new ecosystem. Saturday, enough sun to satisfy weekend warriors. Sunday, we'll just have to see when we get there.
Sounds like a great week of weather, Carmen. Speaking of the weather, I'm just getting an update on the traffic report coming from Seattle. Apparently, the source of the delay has been located at an intersection down on Aurora Avenue. Authorities are warning drivers and pedestrians to proceed with caution, as several vehicles have slid off the side of the road and into the bushes. No major injuries at this time.
You know, Tuckerson, I was reading a discussion online the other day about which street was the most beautiful in Seattle, and I saw Aurora Avenue mentioned several times.
As the most beautiful.
As the ugliest. Speaking of which, Keep Seattle Beautiful, a privately funded campaign with ties to Seattle's massive industrial district, has proposed a new initiative to clean up the waterfront. Spokesmen for the initiative have assured us that there are no conflicts of interest involved, and the project is totally unrelated to recent accusations of harmful industrial waste in Seattle harbors. More news coming on that later tonight.
In other local news, in several school districts, parents have proposed to remove the word unicorn from classrooms, citing concerns over indoctrination and teaching kids to believe in things that aren't real. A group of teachers responded with an open letter, insisting the only kind of indoctrination they're doing is telling students to put their cell phones away during class. This is what Karen Shelley, a concerned parent, had to say.
Well, I think this just makes our concern all the more valid. They just admitted that indoctrination is happening. This is a real issue, and too many people are uneducated, just sitting back and not even paying attention. I mean, what's next? Teaching anatomy using a centaur? It's got to stop.
You know, I totally understand her concerns. Too many people are just sitting back and not paying attention. I wonder how many of you listeners are on your phones right now not paying any attention to us.
Anyway, here's another update from the traffic scene. We are getting an unusual report and need to make a correction. City workers on site have determined the traffic is not weather-related, but due to a kind of electrical interference. Traffic operators are reporting glitches in the lights at the intersection.
Several more cars have slid off Aurora Avenue and onto the sidewalk. Currently, the only injury is a bicyclist who couldn't decide if he was a vehicle or a pedestrian. Many drivers are also reporting their car radios spontaneously turning on of their own accord and hearing alien static as they approach the intersection. Authorities are asking the public not to worry about extraterrestrial invasions at this time.
A valid fear, however, as the current administration has left our borders wide open to alien invasions. Joining us is Frank Simmons, professor at the University of Washington, an expert in electrical radio engineering, who has been called to the scene. How's it going, Frank?
It's interesting down here. Lots of cars on the side of the road, traffic not moving, and then there's the cloud.
The cloud?
Yes, around the traffic lights.
Frank, this is the first we are hearing about the cloud. Tell us more about the cloud.
Oh, it's basically an electromagnetic field.
For those listeners who don't know what that is, could you please describe its attribute for our listeners? Is it visible to the naked eye?
Yes. It's probably a few feet long. It resembles a storm cloud, but it appears sentient as if it were alive.
We're getting reports of people's car radios spontaneously turning on their own. Are you seeing that there, Frank?
Yes. In layman's terms, there's an unusual amount of radio frequency actively coming from the cloud. It's interfering with the communication in the traffic lights. I'm listening in right now. It's seeing if there are any discernible communications coming through any...
Looks like we lost him. Let's try to get him back on the line. But while we wait for more news from the scene, here's a headline for you, Carmen. Gunpoint robber confused by free ramen shop. An unidentified man held up Johnny Brown, the owner of a new local ramen establishment, by gunpoint. Johnny says the man was baffled when he learned there was no money in the cashier.
Yes, the ramen shop, which opened last month, is by donation only via online payment. Johnny, the restaurant owner, says when the would-be robber learned he could have a meal free of charge, he put the weapon away, and they talked over a bowl of noodles. Here's what Johnny had to say.
No, I wasn't scared. He might have had the gun, but I think he was more scared than I was. So I just invited him in to have some food. As we ate, I learned he used to work at a business that was taken over by a large corporation and was fired without leave or pension. My God, he didn't just lose his job. He lost his house, his wife, and said he'd been on the streets trying to figure out how to get enough cash to buy food. It was just heartbreaking. It's not much, but now we can come here anytime we're open and grab a bite to eat.
You know, Tuckerson, it's nice to see some decency out there. I wonder if we as journalists put out more stories like this one, if we'd all have a little more faith in humanity.
You know, Carmen, what really gets me about the Johnny Brown story is that underneath it is another story. One that exemplifies everything that's wrong with this country. One where the business elite create an environment where people like that man feel like they need to turn to violence or drugs or who knows what else just to live. Over and over, the corporations come in, run up debt, extract the wealth, cut costs by firing employees, and move on. And our selfish leaders see nothing wrong with this. Instead, they tell us over and over again that our multi-tiered tax code is based on the principles of the free market, please. It's based on laws that companies lobbied for in order to increase their economic advantage that Congress passed.
It's interesting you say that, Tuckerson. It reminds me of criticisms made in recent years by people like academics or independents fond of wearing homespun wool mittens, all of course ignored by both major factions. It makes you wonder, though, if people from totally opposite sides of the political spectrum who never agree on anything but are saying the same thing and find themselves aligned on this one aspect, then maybe we found the real issue in our country.
Anyway, looks like we have Frank Simmons back on the line with us, radio and electrical engineering expert. Let's get back to the traffic report.
Is the connection back?
Yes, how are things down there?
It's actually quite remarkable. The cloud has become a green pigment that is now spreading all over the sky above Aurora Avenue. My equipment has actually found a communication being transferred through the electromagnetic field.
Wait, can you explain to our listeners what that means exactly?
So you mean to say that right now, you're hearing a message that's essentially coming through the cloud? Is it intelligible?
Yes, I'm listening to it right now. The communication seems to be 1 or 2 phrases long, cycling through languages. I believe that whatever foreign entity is controlling the radio frequency is attempting to determine which language is our own in order to establish communication. So far, I've heard Nordic, Chinese, and Russian dialects.
Engineer, professor, linguist. Hard to believe he's still single.
Unfortunately, I don't speak any of those languages enough to understand what is being said. We're waiting on a translator now. There's French, I think, Latin, Spanish. Wait, here it comes. I think it's English.
What are you hearing? What am I
does it say?
saying? What's
What
going
is
on?
It says, it's lost, confused. It's looking for a place in between.
And so even though I'm okay and the car's okay, my head is just still spinning trying to figure out what just happened. You know, it's just so hard to think with all that noise and chaos. Anyway, till next time, listeners, be kind. Consider that if something is always breaking, then it's always broken. And don't forget to water your plants. Gabriela Jones. Hey, it's Bailey Loveless, writer and usual reader of Gabriela and the Inn Between. Thank you so much for joining us today on this special Halloween month episode. If you enjoyed the show, as always, please consider tipping your Innkeeper over at Ko-fi, link in the show notes below. Not only does your contribution go directly towards Gabriela's student loans, but it costs less than your favorite latte, gets you access to bonus content, and keeps the show advertisement free. A huge special thanks to everyone who made this episode possible, such as our voice actors. Thank you to Matt as Carl Tuckerson, Nikki as Carmen, Shannon as Karen Shelley, Zaid as Frank Simmons, and Ken as Johnny Brown. I'm super thrilled to say that all of these talented actors came right from my local community, which heavily inspires the show, and you can read a bit more about them also down in the show notes. Thank you all so much for your time and collaboration. New episodes of Gabriela and the Inn Between release during the quarter moon phase, with the next episode on none other than Halloween night. I'm super excited for this one. It should be a reflective experience. In between time, though, keep warm and keep well. See you next time, folks.